Hey Gators and sports fans, get all your Gator talk, news, analysis, and opinions on the PodUp with Matthews in the Morning podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform or watch us on Facebook Live between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every weekday. PodUp, because we are Gator fans. So say it's great to be a Florida Gator.
Welcome to this Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Got a good show lined up for you today. We're going to kick it off here in just a second with Matt Baker, who covers college football, the Gators and the Seminoles, and other in-state schools for the Tampa Bay Times. And then we're going to have second portion of the show, longtime sports information director at the University of Florida, Norm Carlson, will reminisce his days there and how he got Steve Spurrier the Heisman Trophy back in the day. But first, let's go to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's first start. You cover, as I said, college football for the Tampa Bay Times, mostly the Gators and FSU. Let's start with the semis up in Tallahassee. We don't talk a whole lot of Seminoles on my show for good reason, but what's going on up there? I think they're going to have like a scrimmage or some type of practice game tomorrow in Tallahassee. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're going to do a mock game is what they call it on Saturday, because in a normal world, obviously the Gators would be getting ready to crush Eastern Washington on Saturday, and FSU in a normal world would be playing in Atlanta against West Virginia in a game that I had been excited about for a long time. Instead, they're going to kind of use the day as a practice and mock situation to just get acquainted with how a game will work under Norvell and everything before they open against Georgia Tech and former Gators defensive coordinator Jeff Collins next Saturday.
You're a Northwestern grad.
Yep.
Give me your thoughts. The Big Ten cancels football. Parents, players bitch and complain and sue. Looks like now they may be kicking off October 10th. You think that happens?
No, the October date is completely unrealistic. Even if all of the reasons the Big Ten didn't want to play in terms of availability of testing and rapid testing and the concerns about the heart conditions and spikes, and even if all that stuff was resolved, I don't think it's just feasible to play in 5 weeks or whatever it is, considering I think some of the teams aren't even on campus. And you look at Northwestern, my alma mater, they're freshmen and sophomores are not going to be on campus. There's so many wrinkles like that. October 10th is not a realistic thing. I think Thanksgiving at the earliest would be a possible date for the Big Ten, but I'm not even sure that happens.
Something just came to my mind. Northwestern's had some good years here and there with Pat Fitzgerald's their head coach, here and there. Same with Vanderbilt. When James Franklin was the Vanderbilt coach, they had some good records. But it seems like those two schools are equivalent when you look at the Big Ten. Northwestern is usually one of the bottom feeders. Vanderbilt is as well. As a Northwestern grad, do you think they should maybe look elsewhere for a different conference?
I definitely don't think Northwestern should look elsewhere. Pat Fitzgerald, he's done a fantastic job.
No, I agree with that. I agree.
Yeah, he got thrown in before he was ready when Randy Walker passed away. He became the head coach and has done a really good job. He's got a great situation because at Northwestern, basically they cared, are your kids staying out of trouble and are you going to a bowl game regularly? Anything on top of that is gravy. And that's fine for the student body. That's fine for the campus population. It's not a huge football hotbed. It's just not. So that's kind of the expectations. And, it's not the culture of Northwestern is not like the culture at Florida or Florida State or Clemson. Football is a nice little kicker, but it's not a central focus. And for that, they're fine. And obviously Northwestern's getting $50 million or whatever it is from the Big Ten, the Big Ten Network every year. So they're doing fine and they're happy with their relationships, being with a lot of the peer schools in the region, and then your Michigans and what have you that are comparable academically. So yeah, they're good where they are. They're happy.
So do you think though the Big Ten will play football this year?
I think they're going to try. I absolutely think at this point they're going to do something in the spring, or at least move in that direction. I mean, let's face it, certainty and any sort of firm predictions, that went out the window in March, right? I have no idea. I have no idea what the season's going to look like for the Gators. I have no idea if they're indeed going to start on September 26th at Ole Miss. So thinking that far out to the Big Ten is a little, it's crazy. I have no idea. But I think they're certainly going to try. There's a whole lot of money at risk if they don't. The players want to play, the coaches want to coach. It's important to the universities and the communities and all that stuff. So I'm sure they're going to try. Whether that's feasible because of the football logistics, the draft, the NFL, recruiting, and of course the virus itself, I have no idea. But I feel confident that they're going to try.
We're speaking with Matt Baker here on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at MBakerTB Times. He works for the Tampa Bay Times, covering the Gators and the Seminoles. Let's talk about the Gators. All right, they're coming off. Dan Mullen's had 2 tremendous years here in his first 2 years. A lot of high expectations this year, especially with the previous schedule till it got turned around here recently. Got 10 SEC games. How do you see this season playing out?
I think it's still Florida and Georgia in the East. Right now, I would give the edge to Georgia. When I did my top 25 rankings a couple weeks ago, one of the factors I put a bigger premium on than usual in the preseason is the recent recruiting rankings and kind of the blue chip ratio that Bud Elliott has done at 247. Recruiting rankings aren't everything, but the stars do matter somewhat. And I think in a year like this, where it's perfectly possible that when a team comes on Saturday, almost all their running backs are out, or almost all their defensive backs, or whatever that case may be. And so you look at a program like Georgia that's recruited at an elite level, I think they've kind of got the edge there just because they've got, top to bottom, better dudes than Florida does. Now, does that mean that's what's going to happen in Jacksonville? No, of course not. I have no idea. But I see Florida and Georgia as the top 2 dogs in the East for sure. And right now, I think I give a slight edge to Georgia, knowing that I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah. And out of the West, you think Alabama's the team to beat?
I do, especially when you look at what's happened at LSU, losing, I think they lost 15 starters, and then Jamar Chase just recently opted out, and then there's been so much attrition there. Auburn, nobody has any idea what to make of them ever. Texas A&M to me is one of the more interesting teams in the country. You look at Jimbo and the program he's built. So far, the Aggies are not getting their $7.5 million a year out of him, and I think he would agree with that. In a pre-pandemic world, everybody was looking at A&M as a potential top 10 team because their schedule is so soft, where they could have started 10-0 and beaten Auburn and 9 pretty crappy teams. Now you look at the way their schedule is set up, where I think they've got Bama and Florida in the first couple weeks. It's a lot tougher. So they're kind of a wild card where I don't know quite what to make of them. But yeah, to me, I think Bama is the clear top dog in the West.
And Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Living there in Tampa, I don't know if you cover a whole lot of South Florida and UCF. Obviously, those programs have kind of gone in different directions. USF has a new coach now that came from Clemson. What are the expectations for the Bulls this year?
I don't think the expectations are particularly high for Jeff Scott in his first season. Obviously this is his first year as a head coach, so there's going to be growing pains with that. He's been one of the top guys on Dabo's staff at Clemson for a while, but being the head coach is different. He doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. The roster he inherited is not that great. Let's be honest. And you look at the way they slid from the heights of under Willie Taggart and then kind of cratered under Charlie Strong. So that the expectations are not particularly high. I think 3-4 wins would be a very good season for them. I don't think bowl is really in the mix at this point. And you look at the schedule too, where the AAC is pretty good. Cincinnati is a top 25 caliber team, and UCF, before their opt-outs, they were a top 25 caliber team. The Bulls have a trip to Notre Dame, so it's not easy for Jeff Scott's first season. I think this is a real year zero kind of thing, where it's just curious to see what he does in the inroads he makes in recruiting and trying to build for a couple years from now, and not putting a lot of stock into what happens to them this year.
And so South Florida has like a 3-year deal with Notre Dame, right, where they go to South Bend for 2 years, and then the Irish will be playing in Tampa?
Correct, yeah. My colleague Joey Knight just got a copy of the contract on Wednesday, and USF is scheduled to be up there on September 19th, and then there's going to be one more game in South Bend and one more game at Tampa. The exact dates of that haven't been set. They've got a year, I think it is, to figure that out. And I mean, that would be a huge, great, assuming it all happens, that'd be a huge boost for the Bulls to get an opponent like Notre Dame to town. USF has done a really good job of scheduling up the last few years. They've got 2-for-1s with Bama, 2-for-1s with, I think, Miami, 2-for-1s with the Gators, trying to really kind of build up some more momentum around the program. And one way to do that is to play the big boys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, Matt, tell me this. You're also a Heisman voter. Who are I mean, obviously Trevor Lawrence, we all know, and Justin Fields, but he's not playing right now.
Right.
Who are some guys on your radar for the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is the obvious one. He's the pretty clear favorite to me as we sit here before a real game has happened yet. Travis Etienne at Clemson, their running back's a fantastic, electric player. If you want a wild card, some of the kind of betting odds sites that I don't take a lot of stock in, but they're pretty high on De'Aaron King from Miami. I think that's a really interesting one. I'm going to be writing something the next couple of days on TampaBay.com about how I think De'Aaron King is the most important player in the state and one of the most interesting players the state has had in a long time. You look at the way Miami has struggled over the last, however long. Not having a good quarterback has been part of it. Even when they were when they went to the Orange Bowl in 2017, they did it with defense and in spite of their quarterback rather than because of him. So if De'Aaron King is the De'Aaron King we saw in 2018 at Houston, when he had 50 touchdowns despite missing like 2.5 games with an injury, if he can do that or something close to that with this new look Miami offense, Miami is going to be an exciting team, B, one of the top 3 teams in the ACC, and I think we'll be talking about De'Aaron King as a potential Heisman guy.
And sticking with the ACC, does Miami have any chance? And I don't even know. The ACC is so damn confusing to me. I don't know who's on what side. So Clemson's on the one side. Who is Miami on the same side as Clemson?
Normally, they are on opposite sides. This year, there are no sides. There are no divisions.
That's right. They're taking the top 2 teams to play in the championship game, right?
Correct. And Notre Dame is eligible for this year.
Okay. So let me back up. So who do you think plays for the ACC championship?
I think Clemson is the easy one. I think Notre Dame is probably the other one. But in the ACC, weird things happen. The Coastal Division has had 7 different champions in the last 7 years.
Can you tell me everybody in the Coastal Division?
Miami, Georgia Tech, Duke, Virginia Tech, Virginia. I'm trying to go north here.
I wouldn't even know if you're telling me the truth. Because is it not the most damn confusing thing ever?
Oh, it's absolutely confusing. It's not. It makes no sense. I mean, it was like when the Big Ten did the legends and leaders.
Yeah.
Back in I just remembered it was the M's, the N's in Iowa were one of them, and then they switched it up again. And yeah, it's confusing. The ACC is it's a beautiful mess, is the way I would describe it. with Clemson and then everybody else that kind of beats each other up and stuff. But yeah, I mean, Miami I think has a chance to really compete there. They lost Greg Rousseau, who's a standout defensive lineman, going to be a top 10 pick. But still, they got some dudes on defense. I think they've got enough playmakers on offense where if De'Aaron King does what I think he's capable of, and if the offense gels and the offensive line doesn't play as poorly as it did in the opener against the Gators last year, I think we could be talking about Miami as a top 20 team.
Yeah, we'll see. Before we let you go here, living in Tampa, being a sports guy working at the Tampa Bay Times, obviously the fan base has got to be excited with Tom Brady and Gronk and that whole crew. Just talk a little bit about what the atmosphere is like in Tampa right now with the Bucs having a chance to make some noise this year.
I think, yeah, the Bucs absolutely do have a chance to make noise. You get Tom Brady obviously on the back end of his career, but he's a type of guy that can be a franchise changer because this is a team, a franchise that has not won at a high level in quite some time. I think the Bucs are such an interesting fan base, and I think there's a lot of doom and gloom to some degree just because of the way this worked out. They've been so bad for so long. Aside from the one Super Bowl and the Dungy and part of the Gruden era, they were so bad for so long, and now they get the best quarterback of all time and Gronk, one of the most interesting players in NFL history, and then everything else. And now there's a pandemic where the first 2 games at Raymond James Stadium, there's going to be no fans. No one has any idea what the season's going to look like. There's a possibility the Super Bowl is supposed to be in Tampa this year. So in theory, the Bucs could be a contender for that, despite fans not being at games. So it's just a bizarre thing where I definitely think there's some the Bucs fans even feel snake bit now, where even now we get this great player and we can't go to games.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see, but I think they have a chance to be very good because they got some good skilled players around him. Matt, let everybody know how they can check your workout.
Sure, of course. I'm on Twitter at mbakertvtimes, and our website is tampabay.com.
All right, my man. We'll be in touch. Stay safe. We appreciate you taking time to join the program today, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it. Thank you.
That's Matt Baker. Join us on the Titan MR hotline at Center State Bank. We put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida and understand that small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Center State Bank, member FDIC. When we come back, we're going to talk to Norman Carlson, longtime sports information director here at the University of Florida. Here's some of his great stories. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Hey Gators, this is Coach Steve Spurrier. PodUp with Matthews in the Morning. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Gainesville Turnover Specialist. Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Celebration Point Town Center, Center State Bank, Chris Doring Mortgage, Campus USA Credit Union, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Doreen Wiebe Realtor Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Rap Spot, Okido America, Gators Dockside, Radware, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Dar Shakow Insurance, Pomodoro Cafe, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, MB Listing, Cornerstone Financial, McDonald's Gainesville, My IT Masters, Gainesville Neon and Signs, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie, Chick-fil-A on Archer Road, Aver and Smith Personal Injury Attorneys, Orange Theory Fitness, PRP Regeneration Specialist, and Dowling Signs. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to this Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We're going to be joined by Norm Carlson here anytime, pretty soon. But in the meantime, we're going to go to a good buddy of mine, Scott Dombeck, who was the golf pro at West End for many, many years and wants to talk about what's going on with West End. They're trying to shut it down. And good morning, Scott. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Scott, you were out, at West End for so many years, and, that's where we played a lot of golf back in the day in college. So many young kids learn how to play the game. Just talk about what y'all are trying to do, the people in this community near West End, what they're trying to do.
Okay. Well, anybody that's driven down Newberry Road in the Jonesville area there can obviously see what's going on, and it seems to have happened so fast that there are just thousands of apartments, homes that are being built. And with West End closing down, Peter Min, who is the son of the owner of James Min, was pretty much to be under my thumb or under my care to help him learn the business and just try to learn it where he could take over and do it. And unfortunately for Peter, a nice guy and everything, but had no interest in the business. And as it is, it shut down. And now new developers working with Peter, which that golf course, if sold now, would be probably 1.5 to 2 million to keep it a golf course or or maybe green space that we're working so desperately to get. He wants to come in there and put 487 residential units, an 80-room hotel, commercial businesses, and pretty much take, which we have traffic anyway, and more than enough condos and houses in that area. There's no green space at all to run, to walk. Even if the county bought it as a park, would be just a great thing for this area. So we're desperately got the community, seems like, behind us. Got a GoFundMe page because we have to hire a lawyer, and you just go to Stop West End Golf Rezoning, and people that want to follow it, just go to Facebook, Friends of West End, and they can follow it. But need the help of the community. If you would like that as a golf course, we can fight this thing, and every developer don't always get their way. And I think the county commissioners might see that, it was a recreational development from the beginning. Never was a clause in there by Howard Hoder, the original owner, to make it commercial, to make it rezoning for development. So it was always to be that, and there's no reason it shouldn't stay like that. With the people moving in town, as you know, and you live in that area, ton of people, ton of kids, it would be a perfect opportunity to make that a golf course again, and someone could do it with the backing.
I agree, Scott. So once again, before we let you go, we appreciate you joining us. Let us know what's going on with West End. Give us that GoFundMe page again. People want to donate.
Yeah, it's a GoFundMe page, and you just search for Stop West End Golf Rezoning. And we've raised about $12,000 to $13,000, but $5, $10. We get enough people at $10 a piece. It's going to take a lawyer or some lawyer to donate their time, but whatever we can slow this thing down. And if we can get a golf course out of it, which would be great. If we get a park out of it, which would be great.
No doubt about it. Well, Scott, appreciate you taking the time to join us and let us know what's going on there. Hopefully things will work out in everyone's way that lives out this way. Hit them straight today, my man.
Yep. Appreciate it. Take care.
All right. That's Scott Dombeck, longtime pro at West End Golf Course. Join us on the Titan MR hotline. Now we're going to go back to the Titan MR hotline, and we're going to be joined by longtime sports information director at the University of Florida, Norm Carlson. Good morning, Norm. How are you? We got to get Mr. C to hit his unmute button. There he is.
Hey, I'm here.
Mr. C, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. How about you?
We can't complain. We appreciate you joining the program today. A lot of people are looking forward to the show today. And first question I have for you before we start talking about your career, I had Chris Patrick on, last week or 2 weeks ago. Who worked at the University of Florida longer, you or CP?
Oh, my gosh. Both of us are oldie goldies. I don't know. Maybe me. I actually started at Florida in 1963, and I went to Florida, graduated in 56, and came back there from Auburn in 63, and been there ever since.
Yeah. So, Mr. Carlson, let's talk about it. You grew up, I want to say, out in Nebraska or somewhere out in that way. You went to St. Louis University, I believe, early in your lifetime. And then what made you come be a student at the University of Florida?
Well, actually, I was born in Omaha, and we moved when I was about 10 to St. Louis, in a city that I still love. It's a great town. And then my dad got transferred to Florida, and he said, it's a lot warmer in Florida than it is St. Louis. So we moved down to Jacksonville.
Okay.
And I went back to St. Louis U one semester, and then it was freezing cold at Christmas. And after that, I said, I think it'd be better off in the warmth. So I came on down to Florida and enrolled at the University of Florida.
Good deal. Let's talk about, obviously, once you graduated from Florida, as you mentioned, you worked at Auburn a little bit. How did the job come about for you to come back to the University of Florida to work in the sports information department? How did that all transpire?
It was really weird. Jimmy Gay, the publicity director at Florida. The Gators played in the Gator Bowl, and he got drunk in front of Dr. Rice's wife, who was the head of the Christian Temperance Union. And he was fired and sent home on the spot. Oh, wow. And so they reached out to me and said, "Do you want to come back to Gainesville?" And I said, "Yeah." And so that's how I got back there.
Interesting. Celebration points where the Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas. And coming spring 2021, the head ball coach's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point where the Gators come to celebrate. Speaking of the head ball coach, let's talk about 1966, Norm. A lot of people say, and obviously Coach Spurrier says it as well, you had a lot to do with him winning the Heisman Trophy. Back then there was no Twitter, there was no social media, not much TV. Just talk about the process of what y'all had to do to get Coach Spurrier out. I mean, people knew who he was, but, I think it came down between him and Bob Greasy in 1966. Just talk a little bit about the Heisman year.
Well, Steve, of course, was a great player, and the public around the country didn't know a whole lot about him. So I got the list of the Football Writers Association's, all their local numbers and everything. So every week I sent out a kind of a resume of what he had done the previous Saturday, week by week. Well, Purdue didn't do anything for Bob Greasy. The PR director at Purdue, his name was Carl Clages, said, "We don't promote at Purdue." Well, that's the job of a PR director, is to promote. So Greasy got no promotion from his people, and Steve got a lot of promotion every week. And it just as the weeks went by, we kept winning, and Purdue kept winning too. And at the end of the year, and also Steve had a great knack of doing things at the right time and the most opportune moments. The weekend that the Heisman votes were going in, on the Sunday after those Saturday games, we played Auburn, and Steve, who was the number 2 field goal kicker, because Wayne Barfield did not have the leg to kick a long field goal, he always kept a square-toed shoe on the sideline in case he had to try to kick a field goal. And late in the game, we had like a 40, maybe 42-yard kick needed to be made to win the game. And we called timeout. Game was on TV, and he kicked the field. It was a line drive, barely below the goalpost, and won the game. And the votes went in the next day, and the momentum of all that put him over the hump. And then when the voting was counted, he won the Heisman Trophy. So that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. We're speaking with Norm Carlson, longtime sports information director here at the University of Florida, historian of Gator football, Gator sports. Got a couple Facebook Live comments and questions here for you, Mr. C. Jeff says, and it's brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Jeff says, Greasy has never forgiven Spurrier for winning. He's a Gator hater. David has a question for you. He would love for you to talk a little bit about Ray Graves and give us a couple of stories about Ray Graves.
Ray Graves, I had known Ray Graves in Atlanta. I was a sports writer for the Atlanta Constitution, and Ray was there at Georgia Tech. He was an assistant coach to Bobby Dodd. And Graves, I remember one night I went out with him to dinner and had a long talk. I really got to be friends with him. He's a great, great guy. So when the change came at Florida and they fired the SID, he called me and he said, we're making a change, and would you like to come back to Florida? Well, it took about 2 seconds to say yes. So that's how I got back.
Just talk about Coach Graves' relationship. He and Coach Spurrier, I know Coach Spurrier is very fond of Ray Graves. Just how was that quarterback head coach relationship?
So Spurrier's family, Spurrier, is from Johnson City, Tennessee, and Graves is from Tennessee, and his dad and Steve's dad were close friends. So that entered into it, and it all just kind of came together and worked out, so he got back to Florida.
We got another Facebook Live question brought to you by Melton Law, where you matter most. Jeff says, had Spurrier kicked any other field goals that year for the Gators, or was that the only one he kicked all year?
No, he kicked a couple others, but they were short, and they were not, they were not consequential in any dramatic thing. The most consequential came at the right time.
Mr. C, when you look back at all the games that you witnessed it wasn't the Swamp until Coach Spurrier named it the Swamp, but we'll call it the Swamp anyway. You saw thousands of games in there. What's a couple that stand out in your mind?
Oh, I think the main one was that kick in Tuscaloosa. Far and away, it was the main one. It was just a consequential kick on the road, and the drama, and the fact that it was right before the Heisman votes. And I think that was far and away the main kick that he made.
Yeah. So, but when you look at, what was your favorite game that you witnessed as the head of the sports information department, just in all the games that you watched at Florida Field? Is there one game that stands out in your mind? Whether it was back when Coach Spurrier played, as you just mentioned, that game, or talk about maybe one of the more recent ones, maybe one that he was coaching in. Is there one game that stands out in your mind?
Oh gosh, I don't know, Shane. They're all kind of a muddle now. There's so many. I can't pick one out. The main one is the win over Alabama in Tuscaloosa is the one I remember.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you were here. What went through your mind whenever they were talking about after, they had fired Galen Hall, Gary Darnell was interim coach, and they were trying to find a head coach to come here and take over the Florida football program. Did they come to you at all, or did you have any insight and say, hey, we need to go hire Steve Spurrier?
No, I don't think they really came to me, but I think in just discussions, I kind of dropped his name and promoted him because I thought he was the best choice for a lot of reasons.
And so when he got hired here, it was kind of a reunion for you guys. Here's the guy that you helped win the Heisman Trophy, as the sports information director, and then you're going to be, he's now your head coach, and you worked hand in hand. Just talk about what he did for college football, what he did for the SEC, and obviously what he did for Florida, how he changed so much for the university and how we played football. What was that like?
Well, he was just different. He was able to make a decision based on what he thought without fear of the consequences. He didn't care what people thought about his decisions, and he wasn't afraid of failure. And so, he was able, because of that, he had no restrictions. In his mind, he was making the choice at the right time, and his choices were almost always correct. And he was a guy without fear. He was without fear as a player, and he was the same way as a coach. He wasn't, a lot of guys that I've seen in coaching and some of them that I've been around fear of failure. They fear the criticism. They're resistant to even making a gamble because, oh my God, if this fails, I'll get blamed and the media will be on me and so forth. And Steve had no fear of that. That had never entered his mind. He just made the choices and went with his instincts and his thoughts.
So you were here for two Heisman winners. I think you'd already retired when Tim won it. But let's talk about, the differences, and obviously we know from a social media although there wasn't a whole lot of social media when Danny played, but just talk a little bit about the different process of the Heisman Trophy campaigns. As you talked already about Coach Spurrier's, how y'all sent letters and stuff out to different writers. What did y'all do for Danny's campaign?
And by the time Danny got there, you didn't have to do as much because there was more media coverage. It was more direct, and the media were much more knowledgeable about the whole national scene, not just their localized. So you really didn't have to do as much for Danny. And I think Steve helped Danny, and his reputation and his involvement, and so. You really just didn't have to do as much as you did when Steve was playing. Danny and Tim were kind of a different deal. But I thought it was unique that certainly it helped that Steve was coaching him and had won a Heisman. And, I just thought that really probably entered into it and got some people in Danny's corner too.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, you talked about, when Coach Spurrier, he coached different than everybody else. He'll say what's on his mind in a press conference. You kind of be in charge of media back when he was coaching here. Did you ever have to sit him down and say, look, Coach, you got to be careful what you're saying, because you guys always preach to the athlete, say the right thing, say this, say that. But, Coach Spurrier was kind of out there sometimes. He'd take some jabs at, whether it was some officials, some other coaches. Did you ever have to pull him in your office and say, come on, or you can't say those type of things?
Well, I might could pull him in my office and say it, but he'd say, yeah, okay. And then he'd go say it again.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, the media got used to Steve, and they expected that, and they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the give and take with him, and they knew that he would say the kind of things that made it interesting to quote him. So just leave him alone.
Yeah. Refresh your vehicle and your brand with a vehicle wrap from Wrap Spot. September is your lucky month at Wrap Spot. Mention promo code Shane and receive 13% off your vehicle wrap. We're speaking with Norm Carlson, historian of Gator sports, Gator football, here on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. I want to ask you this, and this is one that I probably should have told you beforehand so you can do some homework. Give me, let's say, 3 to 5 of the top football players that you saw play for the Florida Gators in your time here.
Well, 3 obviously are our Heisman Trophy winners.
Right.
Orr and Tebow and Danny. Gosh, we've had so many great ones. I don't know, other than those 3, I don't really, the rest of them are all, there's so many other great ones. I'd have to mention a bunch of people or else I'd, would be insulting the others that I didn't mention, but that's the top 3.
Well, I'm going to ask you.
We've had some great receivers now. Jaquez Green, Riddell Anthony, Wes Chandler. We've had great receivers. Jaquez was, I thought, an exceptional player. And, we had a guy named Shane Matthews was pretty good.
Yeah, I was okay. So let me ask you this, because in my opinion, and I don't know if you were still working when Percy played, but obviously you watched Percy Harvin play. And I've always said, I got to be a Gator in 1988. Was not a Gator fan before that. But Percy Harvin is the most talented guy I've ever seen on a football field with the ball in his hands. And a lot of the old Gators say Wes Chandler was that guy. Can you talk a little bit, since you saw both of those guys play, Wes Chandler and Percy? Would you say they were similar type players?
Yeah, I thought they were both very, very exceptional players. Wes was a good one. Percy was unbelievable. He had such great speed, and he was tough. It's hard to pick between 2 players that are both of them are that good. Percy'd be awful hard to beat.
We got a text here on the Titan Tomorrow text line. It's from Joe. Joe says, Norm, out of all the head coaches you work for, would you say Coach Spurrier, you had the best relationship with Coach Spurrier?
No question about it. I had the best relationship with Coach Spurrier. I knew him for so long, and I had a special relationship with him. Urban was a little harder to get to know, but I mean, he was a good guy, but I never did really know him the way I knew Steve. Steve far and away was, and still is. Steve is probably my best friend, other than my wife.
Right. I know y'all have a great bond, no doubt about it.
Still do.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this, because we always have debates, on my show, and when you're sitting around and in the bar after a round of golf or what have you. Everybody wants to know, out of the 1996, the 06, and the 08, the three national title teams, Norm Carlson, who would you say is the best of those three?
The best of what?
The best, which team out of the 96, 06, and 08, out of those three national championship teams, which one do you think was the better team? I guess if they all three had to play each other, who would you pick to win?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy, that's a tough question. I'd say probably the 08 team.
08, yeah, they were loaded. I'm partial to the 96 team, obviously, because a lot of those kids were true freshmen my senior year.
Yeah.
And, they were loaded as well.
Yeah, they were. All of them. That's just, that's an awful tough question. They're all so good, and it's hard to say. I couldn't argue with any choice.
We got another comment here on Facebook Live, brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Jeff wants you to talk about the 1984 SEC championship team. Now, that team was loaded. Talk a little bit about them.
Oh gosh, I don't remember a whole lot about '84. That's a long time ago. I don't really remember that enough to talk that much about them.
Okay. You were here also, obviously, I think you were closer to the football program, but you cover, you're the head of all sports media. How cool was it when we won back-to-back national titles in basketball?
I thought that's one of the greatest accomplishments, if not the greatest, in Florida athletic history. Those guys were as close a knit a team in any sport at Florida as I've ever seen. I'll never forget. You'd go with them on the road. We'd go to the NCAA tournaments, and they hung together. They went out together, and they were, Horford and Brewer and all those guys. They were very, very tight, very close knit. I don't think any team in Florida in any sport has been as close knit as those guys were, and it was fun to watch them. It's fun to watch them, when they would go out on the off day between games together, all leave together, all come back together. It's easier to be close knit in basketball, of course, because there's fewer players, but they were a close knit bunch of people, and good people too. They were not selfish. They shared the ball, and had the best coach in college basketball history in Billy Donovan.
Speaking of Billy, you've been around a lot of college basketball coaches. Did you kind of get a sense when he was first hired here that this guy might be special?
No, I didn't know that much about him, and I didn't know what he was like. But I figured out in a hurry he was a special coach, and there'd been very few like him ever in college basketball, and he certainly proved that. And he's, it was his time to go on to the NBA. He'd done it all he could do in college.
Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Our good friend Buddy Martin says this guy should have his own statue in front of the stadium, not just a press box named after him.
After who?
After you.
That's great. I appreciate all the compliments I can get at my age.
Okay, before we let you go, Mr. Carlson, I have everybody that's been associated with, whether they played with them, coached with them, and obviously, gosh, you've had probably you have had the best and closest and longest relationship with the head ball coach. You got to have at least one good story you can let our listeners hear, because everybody loves Spurrier stories.
The Spurrier stories?
Yes, sir.
My favorite Spurrier story is the kick against Auburn, because he always, we had a great short kicker in Wayne Barfield. He'd never missed, but he'd never kicked one longer than about 40 yards, 35, 40 yards. And my favorite story was him putting his square-toed shoe on the sideline every game, because he knew that if a longer kick came, he was going to kick it. And that kick that beat Auburn, that won him the Heisman, he had the kick was too long for Wayne, and he came over and called timeout, laced up his shoe, walked out there and booted. It was a line drive kick. I mean, it had no, arc to it at all, and it barely made it over the goalpost. And the timing, Votes win the next day and win the Heisman. And to him, it was just, I expected to make it, and that's why I had the shoe out there. And that's really my favorite Spurrier story.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, because I get these phone calls about once a week from the head ball coach about stats and stuff that happened that only he can remember. He sits up in his, he's got an office up there where he used to have one. I call it a closet because it has no windows. And it just seems like he goes through all these different newspaper clippings and comes up with all these new stats. And did you know this? Did you know that? Does he call it Norm Carlson and tell you stuff that you're not aware of that happened?
That sounds just like him. He still does that.
He still does this. It's amazing to me. I'll get a phone call and, I'm like, Coach, he just talking. Did you know in 1991, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Coach. Yeah. I mean, you're the only guy that knows that, but okay. He's a piece of work. No doubt about it.
Yep. That's him. That's what he does. And he's always right. That's the funny thing. The facts are always correct. And he knows, like, if it's a 32-yard kick, he knows it's 32, not 34. He knows, he remembers it all.
Yes, he does. There's no question about it. Let me ask you this. Do you think Coach Spurrier will ever coach again, or do you think he's done, Norm?
He's done. He's done it all. What else could he accomplish?
Well, the only reason I'm saying, I'm not saying go back to college. I'm saying if he did his little deal with the Orlando Apollos, which he loved because he didn't have to recruit, he just called plays. I was just thinking, with the XFL being bought by The Rock and his crew, that if they play, would Coach Spurrier, want to go call some ball plays, for a few more years? Because, I do a lot of different podcasts and radio shows with him, and he still has that itch. And he loves the game of football. There's no question about it.
Yeah, he does love the game of football. And but I think he's through. I think he's down now to hanging out and playing a little golf. He's done.
Well, what's Norm? You've been retired for a while. You just hanging out at the beach, taking it easy with your wife.
Yep, we got our schedule here, and we do things that we like to do, and don't do things that we don't like to do. And hang out. We got a swimming pool out back, so we go out. I swim. Sylvia doesn't. And, she sits there and watches. And her and the dog watch me.
Do you you get to come back to any of the games, or when's the last game you came to in the swamp?
I don't even remember the last game. We don't ever go. Gainesville's 2 hours away. It's not an easy drive. It's 2-lane almost the entire way, and
right.
You got to go through Hastings and Palatka and all 2-lane highways. It's we have a daughter who lives there. She works at Sam's, but we've kind of tell her, if you want to see us, you got to come see us here. That's about it. We don't, you will see almost all of them on television. You don't have to go.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with sitting in the air conditioning and watching good football. Well, Norm, we appreciate you taking the time to join the show, my man.
All right.
Over there, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. That's Norm Carlson, Gator historian. Join us on the Titan MRI Hotline. I'm going to take a second and final time out of the program. When we come back, we'll wrap this show up. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Hey Gators, this is Coach Steve Spurrier. PodUp with Matthews in the Morning. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility.
Gainesville Turnover Specialist.
Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are
Celebration Point Town Center, Center State Bank, Chris Doring Mortgage, Campus USA Credit Union, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Rap Spot, Okido America, Gators Dockside, Radware, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Dar Shakow Insurance, Pomodoro Cafe,
Big Mills Cheesesteaks,
MB Listing, Cornerstone Financial, McDonald's Gainesville, My IT Masters, Gainesville Neon and Signs, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie, Chick-fil-A on Archer Road, Aver and Smith Personal Injury Attorneys, Orange Theory Fitness, PRP Regeneration Specialist, and Dowling Signs.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I want to thank Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times join us, and good old Norm Carlson join us today on the program. This Day in Sports is brought to you by GTS, Gainesville's premier maintenance company. Whether you need carpet cleaning or expert painting, fences mended, or any handyman services, call GTS at 352-363-6622. This Day in Sports in 1990, White Sox closer Bobby Thigpen tops Dave Rigetti's major league record with his 47th save. Thigpen finishes the season with 57 saves. That's Bobby Thigpen, former Mississippi State Bulldog. That's brought to you by GTS, Gainesville's premier maintenance company. Some news and notes. If you haven't heard, Georgia's quarterback is opting out for the year to get ready for the draft. I'm not sure why. I could be 100% wrong, but he is not an NFL quarterback. I don't know if he makes it there. I wasn't sold on him. His name's Jamie Newman. I wasn't sold on him being a great quarterback for Georgia. I could be 100% wrong. There's my thoughts. Thoughts and prayers go out to Tom Seaver's family, a longtime New York Mets pitcher, passed away. Things just 2020 has been an awful year. Tonight, you got two college football games tonight, UAB and Central Arkansas, South Alabama and Southern Miss kick around 9 o'clock our time. But make sure you tune in tomorrow, folks. We got Bobby Bowden and Steve Spur will be on the show, a little interview with them. So make sure you like us, follow us, check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Today's show's a wrap, brought to you by Rap Spot. Take care, be safe. We'll see you tomorrow.